If 1999 is to be remembered for only two films, they would most likely be Star Wars: The Phantom Menace and now Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. 4 years in the making, decades in preparation, it stars Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman as a couple haunted by sexual jealousy. Later, they'll be giving their impressions of working with Kubrick, but first, their recent appearance in London at the premiere of the film rekindled interest in the past work of the man himself. The guest list was a glittering one, but arguably the most important person was missing, the film's director, the late, great Stanley Kubrick.
He was a fascinating guy to be with every day.
Darkly witty.
He was really warm and a laugh. Really made me laugh.
Stanley Kubrick wasn't a prolific filmmaker. He only made 13 movies in 46 years. His earliest classics, such as Paths of Glory and Spartacus, both starring Kirk Douglas, reflected Kubrick's abiding obsession with war. They also marked the young Kubrick out as a director of genius and as someone who was unafraid of controversy.
Two people sharing one room inevitably into kind of...
In Lolita, he dared to examine an older man's passion for a young girl.
4:45.
In Dr. Strangelove, he satirized the Cold War.
So you guys not tasting about it before, eh? You war mustering for it.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
What do you think?
It's good. Now,
Beautiful.
let me explain this to you.
Okay. That dark humour was also evident in his version of The Shining by Stephen King. And in 2001, A Space Odyssey, he leapt from the dawn of man to the infinite future of space. Kubrick's reputation earned him the extraordinary power to make the movies he wanted entirely by his own rules.
Come on, Skip! Look back!
Never one to court the media, his extreme work methods sparked endless rumours about him. The Bronx-born Kubrick left the States for good in 1961. A qualified pilot, he was afraid of flying, seldom straying from his home in St Albans, and the myth of the reclusive director was born. Whilst newspapers speculated on his prodigious work ethic and demands for excessive takes, those who worked with him recognised only his passion for film.
Stanley is a hard taskmaster and an obsessive, to say the very least, an extraordinary man, and I must say, as a young actor working with him on Clockwork Orange, what an amazing experience it was for me.
I'm afraid.
There was nothing dictatorial about Stanley. At least I never found that working with him. And when you sense that you're working with a man who's such a genius, and you did sense his genius working with him, you would do anything. I mean, it's like a benign dictator at the very worst that could be said. You wanted to get it right, because you believed if it wasn't right for him, it probably wasn't right. And I remember doing a stunt that I probably would, I know today, would never have done for any director, and wouldn't have then. And that was when I was dropped head first to the ground, free fall, upside down, from a height of about 3 stories to within 1 or 2 inches of the lens. And all I had at the other end, and was held by 1 piano wire. I never questioned it. If Stanley was asking me to do it, it was going to be okay. I totally trusted him, artistically.
They were filming Tomorrow Never Dies, that James Bond film, in the Bond stage, or a stage nearby. And they were doing explosions or something. And it was on my close-up. And, you know, I'm sort of talking to Tom about something. And these noises, and the sound man said, oh, we have to go again, have to go again. And so Stanley just went, go and tell them to stop. And they went, oh, okay. So someone went to the James Bond set and said, Stanley Kubrick wants you to stop your explosions for about 5 minutes till we get Alan Cumming's close-up. And he did.
In December 1995, following endless speculation on the internet, Warner Brothers, the company which had bankrolled Kubrick for 30 years, announced that he would begin production on his first film since Full Metal Jacket in 1987. To be called Eyes Wide Shut, it was to be based on a 1926 novel by the Austrian Arthur Schnitzler, a friend of Sigmund Freud. and already the stars were on board.
The idea of using Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman came from Stanley Kubrick alone. Nobody suggested it. Kubrick had worked on a script for decades. Stanley at one point was terribly in love with the idea of using Woody Allen and making it a Jewish doctor, straight actor, no comedy. Now the film is very, very close to the original novel. Changed only in form by bringing it to New York in 1998 instead of Vienna of the 20s. But it's a form change because in substance it's exactly the same.
Pinewood Studios became home to Eyes Wide Shut in what is reportedly one of the longest shoots in movie history, lasting 67 weeks.
It might be better to just play it as a medium shot with the situation.
One of the very charming and wonderful features of Stanley was his incredible optimism. When we discussed about the schedule and budget early on, I suggested we schedule for 24 weeks. And he said, oh no, 24 weeks. Look, it's two people talking. 16 weeks. And I said, oh, come on. Let's do it a bit more. Who knows? Oh, no, 18 weeks maximum. And he believed it. It was wonderful. And it took, in fact, a year.
With Kubrick's total news blackout on the production, rumours ran rife of a plot involving drug addiction, cross-dressing, and even an orgy scene. As shooting dragged on, there were casualties. Kubrick was forced to replace Harvey Keitel with actor-director Sidney Pollack, and Marie Richardson took over from Jennifer Jason Leigh. For all Kubrick's strict organisation, he would remain flexible whenever new possibilities presented themselves. A chance hearing of Jocelyn Pook's music brought her on board to score one of the key scenes in the film.
I was just concentrating on sort of about a 15-minute section of the film which starts with the masked ball and continues, and the orgy scene, and so he could just describe that, and I just knew that unit of the film. The piece was played over and over and over again, and I was concerned that it must have got on people's nerves. So when I met Tom Cruise, that's the one thing I asked him. I hope it didn't get on your nerves too much, that piece, driving you mad.
Speculation was further sparked when Nicole Kidman performed in another sexually charged Schnitzler adaptation, The Blue Room, in London's West End. Some of the more lurid tabloid stories surrounding Cruise and Kidman even resulted in high-profile libel cases.
Well, that's not bad.
But in the meantime, Stanley Kubrick himself remained elusive, leaving the public to draw on their memories of him on set with Jack Nicholson when making The Shining in the late 70s. On the 2nd of March of this year, Cruise and Kidman sat down to watch the final cut of Eyes Wide Shut. 5 days later, Kubrick died in his sleep of a heart attack. Kubrick's death was the final twist in what was already a very strange story. Such was the curiosity now surrounding Eyes Wide Shut that even the unveiling of something as mundane as a theatrical trailer became a huge media event, and one over which Tom Cruise would preside personally.
But I don't think people realize that Stanley Kubrick was not only a master filmmaker, but he was also the architect of the ad campaigns of almost all of his films. And after the 90-second teaser, which he personally cut, he intended beginning the TV campaign with a 1-minute spot revealing just a little more his vision of Eyes Wide Shut.
Lady did a bad, bad thing. Lady did a bad, bad thing.
Set in Manhattan, Tom Cruise plays the successful Dr. Bill Harford, and Nicole Kidman his screen wife Alice. Kubrick uses her revelation of sexual fantasies with another man as the starting point to test their seemingly happy marriage, which sets Cruise off on his own sexual exploration.
Back to you. You ever pray with all your heart and soul just to walk away?
To shed some light on this enigmatic film, I'm granted the whole of 10 minutes with each of Cruise and Kidman at the Ritz Hotel in Paris. It was a long shoot. I believe the film took 27 years to complete.
Yes, it did.
It was
I was a teenager when I started the movie.
Let me ask you about Stanley Kubrick. Let me ask you about the first time you met him, what your preconceptions were, and perhaps how they changed over the period of working with him.
I believed the myth, and then you meet him, and he's a human being, extraordinary individual, but you know, definitely human. He's not pretentious at all. Didn't want you thinking him to be a genius or brilliant at all, and actually, you know, wanted to be challenged.
His knowledge of the art of filmmaking. I mean, he knows how to light, he knows how to shoot, he knows everything about, if the sound machine breaks down, he knows how to fix it. He edits, he oversees every single aspect of the film and does not let anybody else do anything.
What can you give in, say, take 50 that you don't give in take 5?
When you're there and you're paying all that money, you've got all those people and you've got a crew standing around, you're going to do what it takes to get the performance. If it happens in 2 takes, and the camera move and everything, it all has to come together.
You're probably right. Now, ladies, where exactly are we going? Exactly. You know, the behavior and the mannerisms of Dr. Bill were very much Dr. Bill, you know, Dr. Bill Harford, and we worked very hard and long to find that character, and you know, but you know, even subconsciously, you're bringing different aspects of yourself to that. But I mean, I am different than Dr. Bill. I'm an actor, and you know, emotionally, I would hope, you know, a little more open and communicative.
Good night, Mandy. Listen, I can't thank you enough for this. You saved my ass.
No, I'm glad.
Bill, I probably. Oh, I know I don't have to mention this, but this is just between us. Okay. Of course.
The very core of the picture, there is the driving force behind relationships, the idea of faithfulness, fidelity, trust. Obviously, you made the film with your husband. And
I also think the fascinating thing about the film is that within 10 seconds, my character says something that completely changes her partner's view of her. And I think everybody has, in 10 seconds, can say probably something about themselves that would change their lover's view of them.
He glanced at me as he walked past, just a glance. Nothing more. But I could hardly move. That afternoon, Helena went to the movies with her friend, and you and I made love. And we made plans about our future. And we talked about Helena. And yet, at no time was he ever out of my mind. And I thought if he wanted me, even if it was only for one night, I was ready to give up everything.
there must have been areas that were touched upon in the film with the relationship between the 2 lead characters in the movie that are obviously pertinent to you as a married couple.
The themes in this movie are pertinent to every couple in the world at times. The themes in this movie certainly are touched on by everyone. They're either discussed or thought or felt. And I think that's what starts Tom's, or Dr. Bill as we call him, his odyssey.
How'd you like to have a little fun?
I'm sorry?
That journey begins casually enough with a chance meeting with a prostitute. But before long it enters ever more bizarre territory.
You will kindly remove your mask. Now, get undressed.
Get undressed?
Remove your clothes.
As a final chapter in his career, Stanley Kubrick was posthumously honoured with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Directors Guild of Great Britain, an award he agreed to accept before his death. Never one to seek the limelight, Kubrick would probably have played down all the fuss.
I wish that sometimes when I was asked, what's it like to be Stanley Kubrick's daughter, I had just said how proud I was. My father was unglamorous, a homebody who loved to read, work too hard, talk to friends and colleagues on the phone for hours, have good dinners, family parties, and always talking over things with my mother, Christiane, who he loved for 42 years. This is perhaps not the person you have in mind when you think of Stanley Kubrick. Thank you.
We met 43 years ago. He wanted a singer for The Path of Glory. So he hired me for that, and that's how I met him. He would say outrageous things as if it was part of the normal conversation, causing us to crack up. It's difficult. He was very, very funny. Very funny. Now that the dialogue has stopped, I very much miss his opinion.
He now is part of the essential vocabulary of film. So the great directors yet unborn will be influenced by Stanley Kubrick.
He was a great loss to us, a great loss. It's hard to articulate. It's hard to really articulate, but I just, I miss him. I really miss him.
It requires a little bravery to describe Stanley Kubrick as a master of modern cinema. What is a little harder to say is that Eyes Wide Shut is a very disappointing movie to bow out on. So what's the problem? His swan song promised much but delivers little. Cruise and Kidman do some of their best work, but their rather anemic characters are difficult to like or even to be that interested in. Instead of the promised eroticism and obsession, we get a far more modest meditation on the nature of fidelity. Although Eyes Wide Shut looks great and Kubrick's fluid camera work is seductive, ultimately it feels both stilted and dated. That said, it's still fascinating, flaws and all, because Stanley Kubrick off-form is more intriguing than most directors at their best. Eyes Wide Shut is on general release, and I should also point out that the National Film Theatre in London is showing a retrospective of Kubrick's work until the end of the month. And that's almost it. Next week, Billy Crystal will be on the couch discussing Analyse This, All Saints Come Clean on the set of their forthcoming movie Honest, and I'll be, as we like to say around here, exclusively revealing the British Film Institute's 100 greatest films of all time. Until then, as promised, here's a little aperitif from The World Is Not Enough, the new Bond movie due in November. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Who are you?
First things first.